Greetings and salutations. So the video thing is working out pretty well. People seem to like them. Keep sending me nice notes. Thank you. That's very kind. So this post is, the videos are going to sort of jump off what I wrote today. So today I was writing about sort of my spiritual path and how I got off the religious path. So, people who are close to me know that for a very long part of my life, starting as a teenager and up through my younger adult years, I'm 49. I'm going to be staying 49, I think, for the next 12 years. But for most of my young adult life, I was very, very involved in the church, in the Anglican Church, a conservative spin-off of the American Episcopal Church. And I was very into it. So I was the youth director, I was the camp counselor, I was the co-director for the camp for 10 years. I taught Sunday school. I was going to be a nun. I went to synods. I did all of this stuff. And it was, I don't regret it. It was very educational. And I was very passionate about it. And very passionate about the rules of the church, very passionate about the conflict between what we call the continuing church, because it was in opposition of some of the changes made in the Episcopal Church when I was a child. And going back to my childhood, my parents had left the Episcopal Church when they changed the prayer book in the late 70s, and we had church in our house. So people would come to our house, and we had pews, and we would have church in our house. My brother was the altar boy, and I was on the altar guild with my mother, and we would have church in our dining room. And we lived in a half a double in Bethlehem. My father was a steel worker, so, it was crazy. My dad's nickname at the steel was Rev, because they would call him Reverend. He was a crane operator, and it was just this wild ride, and my mother was super passionate about it and cared very much about the Anglican Church, mostly tied to her English roots, but also because she just really, really was convicted. So I grew up as a young child in this, I wouldn't say it was a cult. It wasn't a cult, but it was just very dogmatic. A lot of rules. A lot of things I didn't understand as a kid, but accepted because my parents accepted these things. So it was just it was like my whole life was about church. And after I graduated from college and graduate school, I actually went down to a convent, an Anglican convent down near Baltimore, and met with Mother Superior. And wisely, this woman looked at me and said, "I don't think you're called to be a nun. I think you're called to be a mother." And she's right. I was called to be a mother. And if those of you who know me, I have 2 sons. They are 10 months apart because we're not really good at math in our house. And my second son is disabled. And so I was really called to be his mother and to be David's mother. David and Julian are my sons. So I was definitely called to be a mother. So I was very involved in the church for many years. We moved around because of opportunities that I had to do amazing things at different schools. And at one point, about 10 years ago, there had been a new priest at the church I was at. And this isn't really about the priest, but he had wanted to make a change that I just thought was exclusionary. And not in the typical Anglican ways of no women priests and no girl altar girls and all this stuff, but a really weird, ancient rule that had been in the church. And it pretty much, people who weren't confirmed in the church would leave before communion, so that it would just be a family dinner for communion. And I thought, holy Moses, this is exactly what Jesus did not want to happen. And it got overturned because the parishioners in the church, the leadership were no, we're not doing that. But it made me pause and kind of sit back and say, what are all these rules? Where did they come from? Who writes this stuff? And I really had I don't know, a mic drop soul moment where I was looking around thinking, Wow. Where does it actually say that? I mean, this particular church allowed female candle lighters and stuff, but where does it say that girls can't light candles? How is lighting a candle teaching? Like, and it just made me think more and more about all of these rules that are man-made that have nothing to do with divine love and serving God through divine love. And Jesus wasn't about any of that stuff. He wasn't about any of the stuff. In fact, he was about all of the opposite stuff. Jesus was like, let me go find the lepers. Where are the lepers? Show me the lepers. I'm going to go minister to the lepers. Show me where the poor people are. I'm going to go find them, and I'm going to, rustle up some fishes. Like, he was so not about the politics of church and all the crap that goes on in church. But I had been so embroiled in it because it was so much a part of my life growing up that I never really had a place to kind of like step back and say, wow, this is a lot of nonsense. So I walked away. And it was really scary because when you're in a tradition like that, I mean, I can't imagine if you're an Amish woman and you don't want to be Amish, I have no idea how hard that has to be to walk away from that kind of a church. I didn't have that experience. But there really wasn't anybody cheering me on, right? Everybody that I knew in the church was trying to get me back because there wasn't a falling out. There wasn't anything like that. I didn't want to be part of it anymore. I didn't see Jesus in any of the stuff they were doing. So I walked away, and then I was really lonely because I had nowhere to kind of go. There was one exception. I will always rant and rave about the good work done by Nazareth House in Kentucky. They were missionaries in Sierra Leone. They're missionaries in their community, and they take no paychecks. Like they like do work for the world in quiet and in secret. And I know that they're going to even yell at me for even talking about them because they don't want to get caught up into the world. And like they are the perfect mission group for exactly that reason. They're not out for their own ego. They're not out to do anything but serve the divine love of God. So I've always been connected to them. And there's a link in below where you can learn more about what they do and how to support their work if you choose to. So really, I didn't know what to do. So I'm a hiker. I'm a long distance hiker, and I moved to the town that I live in because it's right on the Appalachian Trail. And when we moved from New Jersey to Pennsylvania so that I could take the job that I have now, I said, I don't want to move back to my hometown where this college is. I want to live on the trail. And we looked at all the trail towns, and I said, I always had a good feeling about this particular town. And we should look for a place there. And I don't regret it. It is a fabulous small town. It is full of just tremendously great people. Like every other town, it has its issues. Everywhere in Pennsylvania has problems with, either meth or heroin or things like that. And of course, our little town isn't immune to that. So there are, but by and large, we don't have much crime. We don't, everybody knows everybody. Everybody's kind. Everybody, like, whenever there's a fire or somebody has an emergency, like, everybody in this town will gather around and do whatever it takes to help. And nobody's asking, is that person, black or brown or green or purple. They're not saying, is that person gay or straight or are they male, female, or non-binary? Nobody asks any of those questions. Everybody's like, what do they need? How do I help? How can I get them gift cards for the grocery store? Can I, bring them clothing? Can I bring them a meal? Like, they're the kindest, most generous people I've ever lived among, and we've lived all over the East Coast. So, I would say that they are parallel to people that live in Virginia. We lived in the poorest part of Virginia for a while, and those people too, tremendous spirit, come together for anything that people needed. Just so helpful, so kind, and without having qualifiers. They helped anybody who was in need, and so I just knew that Palmerton was, this is where I'm going to live until I retire, or whatever. This is where we're going to stay. I wish I had found it sooner, but that wasn't the path. So I came to Palmerton, and I didn't join a church because I found that my church was on trail. right? So I walk on trail. I'm a section hiker, so 10 days a year I go out on trail. I do day hikes all the time, but 10 days a year I go out on trail, and I hike a section of the Appalachian Trail. So that's where I find God. I find God in nature. I get on trail, and within like 5 minutes, my I just come back to this place of, being one with nature, and I just talk to God, and we have a chat, and we talk about, I talk mostly, and then I try to listen and reflect. There are things that don't happen. I don't get to sing hymns, and I don't get to hear a good sermon, and I don't get the community and fellowship of being with other people. But for my spiritual beliefs, like that is where I feel like I can hear very clearly, what God's purpose is for me. So I didn't feel a need to join a church. And then the pandemic hit. And back when Gulf War, Gulf War, and then 9/11, and then when those things happened, I remembered that I went to church, when everybody got called up, my cousin Dave, like everybody, all the young people that I knew, the boys were in the service, in one of the services. They had all gotten called up to go. And then 9/11, we all went to church that night and had prayer vigils and things like that. And there's something about a group of Christians, and I'm sure this is true in the Jewish tradition and other traditions too. There's just something about a group of people praying together that just brings tremendous healing. And I believe in the power of prayer and all the voices lifting up together. So I didn't have that for COVID because I didn't belong to a church. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? I don't belong to a church. Well, it turned out that one of the churches we have a lot of great churches in my town. Like, they're all really super great, and they work together, which is nice. Like, they don't compete with one another. They actually do a lot together. They have a food pantry called CACPAC, where they all kind of work together. But there was one church that kind of stood out to me, and it's near the high school, and that's where this food pantry is housed. But it's also the place where like every kid in town learns to drive, because they have like cones set out for kids to learn how to drive their car. We took our son there to learn to drive. Like, it's just they do a lot in the community, and every like community fair they have a stand. They're always out doing something in the community to help the community. Recycling happens there. So they were doing church in the parking lot, and I thought, wow, that's great. I don't have to talk to anybody. I can be with people. I can pray with people, but I don't have to get sucked into being on any committees. I don't have to teach Sunday school. I can just go and just be invisible and, be with God, be with these folks. We can all do our thing. And I liked it, but it was solitary because I was in Abe the Lincoln, my car, and it was wonderful, but it was also still a little lonely. So before Christmas this year, if you've grown up in a tradition like the Anglican Church or the Roman Catholic Church — Dave was raised Roman Catholic, and I went to a Roman Catholic college, and I belonged for a brief while in the one place that I lived at, a Missouri Synod Lutheran Church. If you're from that kind of like Catholic, small c, tradition, you know that preparing for Christmas and Easter is almost as important, if not as important, as the holidays themselves. So I really felt called to like be part of an Advent study or Advent services leading up to Christmas. And so so I asked on our like community Facebook page, about what churches were doing for Advent. And so, a bunch of people posted like great stuff about their churches, and it made me really proud, because like everybody is proud of their churches here, and that's really great to see. And there's really great churches ranging from, super duper evangelical, and they're amazing places. And I went with my friend to her church, up through the Catholic churches and the Ukrainian church. And, there's like everything you could want in the different churches, and filled with really great people, because my town is filled with really great people. But I was kind of like, I went to one, and the pastor after church was talking on his cell phone as his own parishioners were leaving. And I thought, dude, this is your flock. Get off the phone. Tell that person you'll call them later. Like, you have a job here. Do your job. And it just looks like, you know what? This is what I don't want to get involved in. So I'm like, I don't know. I'll just do something at home. I'll do my own thing. I know I'm better when I have to go somewhere and report in. I'm a good student and a scholar, so I know I do better if I have to actually go somewhere and study with other people. So I was a little disappointed that nothing spoke to me. And then we have this thing called Christmas trees in the park, and we sponsor a tree for veterans. And they have like a festival, like a night where you go and they light the trees and they have food and stuff. And this girl walks up to me, teenage girl walks up to me, and she was in the buddies club with my disabled son, but there was a mainstream kid, and these kids would volunteer to be with the special ed kids, of which my son was one. And she came up to me and she said, "Oh, I know Julian from school, from buddies club, and I saw that you posted on Facebook that you're looking for a church. You should come to my church." And this young woman who didn't know me was totally bragging and so proud of her church. And I thought, God, you're pretty sneaky. Because if anybody's going to get me to go to church, it's going to be a teenager. Because my whole life had been about youth ministry and teenagers. And when I was going to be a nun, I wanted to work with troubled teenagers. So this was not a troubled teenager. She was not troubled at all, but I don't think. But, if God was smart, because he's like, I'm not going to send you some old lady who talks sweetly about her church, because you'll go, oh, that's sweet. Isn't that cute? I'm going to send you a teenager, because if that teenager is bragging about her church, it must be truly special, because we have teenagers. They don't brag about church. They brag about video games and YouTube, right? So I thought, okay, this girl was brave enough to come up to a stranger and brag about her church. I'm going to go to this church. And I really like that church. To be honest, if I were ever going to join a church again, and I may, I don't know where the path is leading, so I may join a church again. If I do join one, it's probably going to be that church, because they do so much in the community. They sing hymns. Now, I like secular, modern Christian music, but I like it in my car. When I'm in church, this is how nerdy I am. Way back when I was in not high school, college and grad school, my friends, we would go to Philly every weekend to go to dinner. We would sing hymns in the car. We had hymnals in our car, and we would all flip to page 24. And then the guy that drove, he had memorized all the hymns, so he knew all of them. Thousands of hymns, but he knew them all. And we would just sing hymns. And so I'm a big hymn singer. I like hymns a lot. And they actually sing hymns at this church. They have a bell choir, which is beautiful. They have an actual choir that's beautiful. And the message that when I had started going for Advent, their minister had retired. And so they were between ministers, but now they have a new minister, and he's great. He's very energetic, and you can see that he understands the purpose of church, and he understands the concept of divine love and the work of Jesus, and as an example of divine love. And so if I ever did join a church again, I probably would join that church. But for me, right now, that's not the path. Right now, I'm on a spiritual path. I've always been spiritual, but I think I had to get off the trail, as we say on the AT, because I really needed to see what it is I believed. Because no matter where I was in my faith journey, after leaving the church, I never stopped believing in divine love, and I never stopped believing in Jesus Christ. So those two things stayed with me, no wavering ever. There was never a doubt in my mind that Jesus Christ lived, or that there's one powerful God. So I needed to know, that was my belief, that I wasn't just believing that because I had church in my living room when I was 6 years old. That is my belief, and I believe that, that we are born again, that we have to at some point in our life accept that Jesus was our Savior. And no judgment to people who don't believe that. From me, absolutely no judgment. But that, that had to be my belief. That had to be my belief and not something I was carrying from my family. So, where do I go from here? I don't know. I don't know what the path is from here. I'm working on my spirituality. I'm working with my spirit guide. I'm working with what I believe is our calling, which is to spread divine love. And if that leads me back to religion, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. I'm like a friend that comes and visits. I'm not sure I'm ready to join the family yet, but I'm definitely the fun friend who'll come and visit every once in a while. and we'll see where it goes. I want God to direct my path. I don't want to say one way or another whether I join a church or not, because I'm just not there yet. I'm not at a place where I'm called to make a decision. But I pray about it, and I use a lot of different tools, and I know that the tools that I use are in not conflict with the church, but a lot of religions don't approve of some of the tools that I use. I don't read tarot, not because it's a cult. Like I don't believe in a cult really, because I don't. I mean, they're just cards, right? They're just cards. It is your intention with the cards, right? So, but I use, I do use runestones. In another video, because this is a whole other rabbit hole, I do embrace the philosophy of the Druid tradition, which is the Celtic tradition of which my family is from. So I do rely on some of those things. We don't know a lot about Druids because nothing was written down. So, so that's a whole other thing. But a lot of the things I do think are spiritual are things that the modern church, or that not the modern church, the church, that denominations, a lot of things they don't accept. Oracle cards, pendulums. I'm not really into crystals or chakras yet or anything like that. But some of the things that I use, I know, divination tools, I know the church does not approve of. And they're in my spiritual path right now. And I don't want to have to argue with I don't want to have to argue with people about it. I don't want there to be judgment there, which they'll say there's no judgment, but there'll always be that, you really should give up. And I don't see the evidence that I have to. So in fact, I see evidence quite the opposite, that says that any tool that we use to bring us closer to divine love is good. What I decide to do with I have this crystal tree right here. It's blue. I don't know, it's a stone that they say brings wisdom. Like I said, not sold that stones do that, but it makes me happy to have it sit by me while I'm working and doing my thing. I don't want somebody telling me well, you're celebrating the occult because you have that tree by you. I don't want to hear your nonsense, because where does it say that anywhere? And then they'll whip out some Bible phrase, but then you can whip out a Bible phrase to justify slavery. They did it for centuries, and that was baloney, right? So I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear you people take the Bible and use pieces of it to justify certain things that they hold on to. Girls can light candles in a church. There's no reason they can't. I'm just tired of all the man-made, human-made. I don't want to even say man-made, because men are capable of making bad decisions. I just don't want any part of that. I don't want to go back to that. So I'm happy being the visiting friend. I think they do wonderful work in the community, and I'm sort of okay with where it is right now. So I had to get off the trail so that I could see the trail for what it is. And now, as I hike toward what I think is the terminus, which is divine love, I think I'm wiser for it, and and I think I can see things more clearly, because I'm not, I'm not wedded to any particular denomination. I can kind of love them all for all the good things that they have to offer. I can look past the bad things because I'm not a member of it. I'm not endorsing it by being a member. So that's where I am, and that's hopefully enough to think about for today. That's what I wrote about today in my reflection. So thank you for watching, and please hit the like button and post comments. I would love to hear what you have to say and what your experience has been. Even if we don't agree, that's the beauty of love. We can agree to disagree. So be well, and all the best of light and love to you. Be well.